So the big question is to start with is what is leadership and what is management? Because I think we use those terms interchangeably too much. We talk about managers and leaders and we kind of mean the same thing. Management is about doing things right. So management comes at you. I always think you don't have to move to do management. You go in the morning, you turn on your emails, you've got meetings in the diary, you've got things to do. You don't have to be that proactive as you go through a business to be doing management. It's there. So Drucker talked about planning and budgeting, organising and staffing, controlling and problem solving. But if we now move on to leadership, he talked about this being doing the right things. So do you know what the right things are as a leader to do? You've got to be much more proactive. This is the emotional stuff. It's establishing direction, it's aligning people, and it's motivating and inspiring. What are we not going to talk about? There's other stuff you'll be thinking, well, hang on Ian, there's other stuff in leadership that maybe you haven't mentioned yet, and there are, sure. It's what Patrick Lencioni would call smart leadership, and he'd call the stuff I'm going to talk about healthy leadership. And it's the 80-20. You're going to spend most of your time on the leadership practices side. That's where the behaviours are. That's where your day-to-day stuff is. Developing your strategy, creating your strategic priorities, knowing your financials, your dashboard, understanding your competitive advantage, and creating that clarity and alignment are things you won't spend all day doing. You'll set them, you'll monitor them once a month, you'll have big meetings. But you won't spend all your time doing that. It's the stuff on the left that I think is really going to change your business that I'm going to talk about today. Here's a company we've all heard, and I'll use examples we've all heard. Walt Disney, creating happiness. What a lovely, simple purpose they have. A friend of mine called Dominic Doe went to Disneyland in Florida and did a course. You can go out there. I don't know if anyone's done one. Have anyone been to Disneyland, done actually a management course, leadership course? You can go out there, spend a lot of money, and they'll teach you what the magic dust is behind Disney. And he went out there, and one day he was with his 3 colleagues walking around the park, and there was a lady sweeping the floor in the park, because you never see litter, certainly in Florida you don't, in Disney World. And she came over to the group and said, let me take a photo of the group, you don't need to take selfies. Took lots of photos of the group and wished them a happy day. And she went back to sweeping up. And they went back to the course director and told him the story. And he said, well, that's brilliant, because the phrase we have in Disney is, are you on purpose? And you've got to be on purpose for 24 hours a day in your business. But you can be off task. But you can't be on task and off purpose. You can never be off purpose. One thing to think about is, well, what's your purpose of your business, and have you articulated it? Gallup Q12, Q stands for questions, 12 questions. If you want to do a staff survey, the place to go is Gallup Q12, just 12 questions. As a leadership team, what it gives you is a fabulous feedback on how you're leading your business. Because these are 12 questions that will tell you how engaged your staff are. And all the research they've done shows that engaged employees are productive employees. But, interestingly, question 8, does the mission purpose of your company make you feel your job is important? So Gallup think that question is so important they put it in their Q12 in staff surveys. I guess you all have seen this photo or similar versions of this. JFK. He said that in 1961, and they did not have the technology to land a man on the moon when he said it. So that was quite inspiring for NASA, I'm sure. We thought, how are we going to do it? But also it was very inspiring for the nation, because if you go back to 1961, what was going on in America? They were in a space race. It was a Cold War going on in the world. They were entrenched in Vietnam. It was a tough place to be, and the population needed some inspiration. And so this is one of the ways he got that inspiration through the population. Of course, they achieved it. Unless you're a conspiracy theorist, they got there before the decade was out in 1969. So let's look at one that's a bit more earthbound, and indeed it mentions the Earth in the vision. Our vision is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. It would be amazing to have a vision in a business that you knew that said, no, it's not just Horsham or Godalming or Guildford, it's the Earth. To be the Earth's most customer-centric company, to build a place where people can come and find, discover anything they might want to buy online. And if any of you have read Jeff Bezos' book, it shows how he built Amazon up. you'll see that he never started with the intention of having an online bookstore. He started with the intent of having a massive online repository of anything. As I was preparing these slides a while ago, I got this email from Amazon, because like most of you, I order loads of stuff from Amazon. And I thought this was really interesting, because on the bottom of the email saying they were sending me something was, "We're building Earth's most customer-centric company." And I thought, what a great way of reinforcing it through Amazon's employees. Patrick Lencioni is the man, the guru on high-performing teams. The great thing about Patrick Lencioni's books are they are all stories, they're all fables. There's only one book he's written called The Advantage, which sums up all the other books, that actually is a bit like a management book. So they're easy to read, they're great. Anyone I work with, I recommend they read the first one, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which will tell you all about how to build a high-performing team. And he says here, remember, teamwork begins by building trust, and the only way to do that is to overcome our need for invulnerability. If you're going to build a high-performing team in your business, you have to start with having people who trust each other so deeply they're able to show that they're vulnerable. And it has to start with the leader. The leader has to show that actually you don't get everything right. The base of the model is trust. Build up vulnerability-based trust, so that we basically will trust each other so deeply, not the trust that I trust you to do something, but the trust that is so deep that I don't take personal digs from you, I'm happy. You don't get the artificial harmony in your teams and your boards where you nod, but you don't really mean it. You get proper conversations. And those proper conversations he calls conflict. Lencioni says if you don't weigh in, you don't buy in. So you've got to get that buy-in and weigh-in to all the discussions you're going to have. Once you get that happening, people start committing around the table. You get commitment from people. And then the holy grail, which everyone says to me about their businesses, how do I get more accountability? You've got to get people being held accountable. You only get all this happening on the basis of trust and on strong, challenging meetings. And when you get up to the accountability level, then you start getting team results. And it's your top team that need to start producing those results. And when they do, it transfers down through the organization. And your top team must take away this model and start working with their teams in the business. The first year of working for Selamy, before I became the MD, I was a senior consultant. This was back in 1997. And I sold in a big piece of work into Sainsbury's. And I delivered that piece of work. And I was coming back with the MD at the time, a guy called Mark Watson. We're in his car, coming back from London, just been to Sainsbury's, and he said, I need to stop and go into a sports shop. He was a mad mountain biker, so I thought, fine. He said, come and look around, it's a really nice shop. So I was looking around. And we got back in the car, and he handed me a bag. And he said, there you go. I think you did a fabulous job in Sainsbury's. And that was it. And I opened the bag, and there was a golf shirt. It's a really expensive golf shirt. You know. And I've always remembered that. I got a pay rise that year, which was nice. But why did I remember the golf shirt? Because he knew that I played golf. And it's a bit like the handwritten card that people don't send these days. It's personal. He recognized who I was. So it's really, really important that you don't think you can motivate everyone by standing on stage and saying, we did a great job. You've got to know individually what people are looking for or what they love in their life. Is it they like going to see Chelsea play football? Is it they like gourmet dinners with their wife? Is it they like going to the theatre? Because then, when you reward them, you can reward them something that's really personal. So the challenge I'd put to you is where you've got people working for you, list their names down the left-hand side and write 3 things that they really care passionately about in their lives next to them. And then when you want to reward them on those 3 things. By all means, give them a pay rise, but the thing they'll remember is the tickets for Chelsea. I'm sure a few people in the room know maybe don't know him, but remember Martin O'Neill, Aston Villa. So when he came into Aston Villa back in 1991, they were 16th, and he got them up to 6th in 4 years. And he's known as a great man manager, a great motivator of people. And what he did is when he came in, he said to his videographer, he said, get a video 2 minutes long of all my players, and I only want you to focus on the positive things. So if it's a striker, how well they are at getting the ball in the net, heading it. If it's a midfield player, how well they head and trap the ball and pass it. You know the thing. So we got all these made up, and then he sat down with each individual and said, that's what you do well, just do more of that. didn't concentrate on the fact that they'd missed a tackle in last Saturday's game, focused on the positive. And he got so much out of his people. Now, that isn't to say that sometimes you have to have tough conversations. And I'd be the first to say go and have a tough conversation when you need one. But there's a lot of evidence out there that when we have formal or informal discussions with people, the Leadership Council, if you want to go and research it, showed that if I have a one-to-one with you, sir, and we're going to talk about what went on last week, and it's an informal discussion, if I leave you on a positive overall, I might have put a few things in there you could improve on, but if it's a positive overall conversation, your productivity is going to go up by 38%. If I overall leave you in a worse place than I found you, feeling pretty disillusioned about it because I've knocked your confidence and showed that you did a lot of things wrong, your productivity is going to go down by 26%. That is a massive swing you're in control of. Question is, why do you need core values? Now, a lot of people who were sitting in this room, if I said, what are your personal values? Better write them down. Pretty sure it'd be quite easy. For your business, if you're the leader, they're probably going to be pretty congruent with your personal values. But what do you use these core values for? Well, the fact is you should be using them when you get beyond about 10, 15, 20 people. You should be using them for absolutely everything. You should be plastering on your website. You should be using them to recruit. Recruitment interviews, you should be looking for the behaviors they exhibit. Because how many times you talk about people who haven't got the skills versus some people who've got the wrong attitude? All the conversations I have with SME leaders are about this person's not behaving in the way I want them to behave. It's rarely about the skills and the knowledge they've got. So why aren't you recruiting on attitude? Why aren't you recruiting on behaviors? Why aren't you putting behavioral questioning into your interviews? So you put them into recruitment, you put them into induction, you put them into your appraisals. So you appraise and you performance manage on the goals and they're achieving their targets and how they're behaving. You put them into your succession planning. If you're going to promote people through your business, you want them to live your values, to be part of the culture you're trying to create. And I'll make a controversial statement here. I'll say success has little to do with talent. If you read Angela Duckworth's book, she looks at the army, she looks at officer selection programs, she looks at organizations and the best organizations and taking people in. She looks at spelling in school kids, and she looks at IQ versus success, broadly speaking. And you find out again and again and again, it's not about, talent. It's about this ability. It's certainly you've got to have a certain level of it. But beyond that, it's not about talent. It's about grit. It's about grit and determination to succeed. Now, I said at the beginning, you all hit challenges along the road growing businesses. And it's those who really persevere that get there. And have some of the other things in place that I've talked about. So grit matters more than talent is what I would say. Here's some examples. If you watch the Olympic hockey final against the Dutch, you'll know, and everyone else will say, the Dutch were a much more talented team than the GB team, but we won. 3-3 penalties, we won. The Beatles were rejected by the first record company they approached, saying, we don't like their sound and guitar music's on the way out. You may have heard that quote, but of course they went on to be quite a success. Churchill failed the entrance exam for the Royal Military College twice. I think we all know what he went on to do. And finally, Charles Darwin's father didn't have great things to say about him at the time. You'll be nothing but a disgrace to yourself and all your family. Angela Duckworth describes it in these words: passion and perseverance over the long term. Of course, the long term wraps it right back into your vision, doesn't it? What's the long term? What's the long term for your businesses? If you haven't got a vision, then where are you going? All roads will lead there if you don't have a vision. So, I'll end with a quote. Woody Allen, who I love, great film, said 80% in life is showing up. Are you showing up as a leader, is what I'd say. Because if you're doing those 6 things, if you're living a purpose, if you've got a purpose, if you've got a vision out there, if you're creating a high-performing team, if you know what motivates people and focus on them individually, if you've got a culture based on shared values that you've got and you drive everything through them, and you've got grit, you've got a pretty good chance of having a great organization.